Welcome to the Goalie Hacks Podcast, the show dedicated to providing elite tips, hacks, and strategies to take your game to the next level, where we help you become an elite goaltender, one hack at a time. And now, here's your host, Mike Santaguida.
Bang, bang. What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Goalie Hacks Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Santaguida, and thanks again for tuning into the show. Shout out to my newest patron, hacktivist this week, Cam Smith, hailing from Stouffville, Ontario. Cam was drafted by the London Knights last year. He's an incredible goaltender and has been a part of my community almost literally since day one. I think when him and I started chatting, I had maybe like 100 follows on Instagram. So thank you for your support, Cam, since day one, and I couldn't be happier to add you to my inner circle. If you're interested in working much closer with me side by side with an active professional goaltender and to catapult your development, for just a few bucks a month, you can become a member of my inner circle and join my mentorship program where I offer a slew of extra perks to my community members. Either hit me up directly or head to my page at patreon.com/goaliehacks, included in the show notes, for more details on how to get started. This week on the show, I have the privilege of being joined by three-time ECAC champion, one of college hockey's best, Cornell University's associate head coach, Ben Syer. Now, if you guys have listened to my story on the first pod, I mentioned Coach Syer's name, and he played a monumental role in guiding me over the years toward getting a Division I offer. We discuss how we met, his thought process behind guiding me over the years, what it takes to play Division I college hockey, and how to stand out and get more exposure by Division I schools. This upcoming week, I will be releasing a completely free 14-plus page ebook to my email list only. So it'll discuss a major pillar that can help you transition easier to higher levels, what it means, and how to use it to your advantage. And it's a staple pillar of mine that's helped me transition to the next level much easier over the last 11 years trying to move up in the hockey world. So head to my website at goaliehacks.com to sign up for my mailing list to make sure you don't miss this release this week. Shout out to our main sponsor, NeuroTracker, and if you guys are looking for more info on the experience people are having, head to my Instagram page and check out the NeuroTracker story highlights and see for yourself what people are saying. Feedback has been awesome. If you're interested in getting started or want more details, whether you're a player or coach, younger or older, definitely send me a direct message on Instagram today after this episode to get the full details on what exactly we've been doing and how you can get started. To kick off our sponsorship, we are giving away a free subscription for the new NTX product not available to the public yet, so stick around to the end of the show to get details on how to enter into the weekly giveaway. Without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. I know you guys are going to love the chat Coach Syer and I had today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Goalie Hacks Podcast. Today on the show, I have the pleasure of being joined by an old friend and someone who guided me in the right direction and played a huge role in a lot of my decisions over the years trying to get to college hockey, the associate head coach of Cornell University, Ben Syer. Coach Syer has been coaching at the Division I level for 20 plus years now and has won the ECAC League Championship 3 years in a row now with Cornell University. For the people that don't know, Coach Syer had a very strong hand in recruiting a lot of those players, if not all of them, that were a part of the national championship bid in 2013 against Yale as well. He's the reason I ended up going the college route and the route I did over the years, and I couldn't be happier to have him on today to chat. Ben, how you doing, Coach? Super glad to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike. It's great to be here, and it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's incredible to finally connect. You've had such an enormous impact on my journey and my career, and I can't thank you enough for everything you did for me over those years while I was trying to play Division I hockey. I don't think we've actually ever talked on the phone, to be honest. I think we've only exchanged emails, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think you're right, and then obviously with some of the different tours that had occurred and so forth there, it's interesting because sometimes you really don't know how those emails are perceived on the other end, and you certainly want to provide helpful and useful information because I know with yourself, your journey was different than most from the area that you grew up, and you just want to be able to provide insight and a little bit of guidance to hopefully help people along.
Yeah. Yeah, and those that don't know, if you actually listen back to my first episode of the show, I name drop Coach Syer and talk about how he was my go-to person for assessing career decisions and sort of, deciding where I should go. He guided me and gave me advice to go the prep school route, and he guided me and told me to try out in the USHL and then to go to the BCHL. So it's just crazy how, everything really ended up panning out, and just you helping me in the decision making process when me and my family, like you alluded to, it's not a very common route where we're from, and you're from Kitchener as well in Ontario, so I'm sure you can imagine. But we're really clueless on what we should do. So like I said before, I can't thank you enough for what you did for me, and hopefully today we can share some of those stories and shed some light on the recruiting process all the way up to college hockey and even beyond.
Well, that's great. I'm certainly looking forward to it. And as I said, I'm certainly glad it all worked out for you, and that you had a great experience at Vermont, and certainly even embracing the journey to get to that point as well.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting, and we'll dive into it today. We got a lot of awesome stuff to go over, but maybe you can just start off by giving our listeners a quick background on yourself, where your hockey journey started and how we got to where we are today.
Yeah, certainly. As you alluded to, I grew up in Kitchener. I actually started in even a smaller town, Maryhill, just outside of Kitchener, before I moved to Kitchener. But did all my minor hockey playing in the Kitchener area, and certainly had a lot of great mentors and influences while I was there. I was always just a hard working type player. And to be honest with you, a lot of my mentors or people that were influenced me weren't just coaches, but they were teachers as well too.
Mhm.
I go back to those people and those experiences a lot of times. In fact, both my parents were teachers as well too, and it was like many as you were growing up. As I mentioned, I was kind of a just a hardworking player, and was kind of looking at some of the different options. And to be honest, I just thought I'd be a teacher. I didn't think
Mhm.
staying in hockey would necessarily, be my option. And I went to the University of Western Ontario. I continued to play junior hockey while I was there, and tore my
Nice.
ACL
Wow.
during my time there, and really started looking at career paths, and I was
Yeah.
fortunate to meet um, another student in one of my classes, and got me geared up to take a master's program in the States, and without boring people here, I ended up um, uh, uh, going to really the director of Kitchener Minor Hockey, Tony Martindale, had graduated from Ohio University, and he was not only the director of minor hockey, but a friend of the family as well too, and
Yeah.
helped me get down there, and really got an opportunity to experience a master's program, studying not just hockey but sport and career in sport for a year down in Athens, Ohio, and that's I think where some of my interest started to wane from just being a teacher, and ended up meeting my wife at OU, and so
Nice.
that was a little bit of a draw, I guess, to kind of stay in the States for a while.
Yeah.
But from there, moved out to Quinnipiac University, and they were just kind of getting up and running as a Division I program, and so I was fortunate. I was hired really with not a lot of money. It was kind of
Yeah.
a leap of faith by Coach Pecknold to hire me. He just wanted a young guy that would run around and recruit, and I loved it and enjoyed it, and really got an opportunity to probably see more Canada and the U.S. than I would have had I stayed in Ontario. And
Yeah.
from there, spent a number of years. I think it was 12 years that I stayed at Quinnipiac, and then now have moved on to Cornell, and I've been here for 9 years, and our family's well established here in the Ithaca community. My wife works on on campus here as well too, and so it's certainly a unique journey for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. How come you decided to make that jump to Quinnipiac? It's crazy actually looking back because I talked to Coach Wallach. I had him on the show, and
Yeah.
you guys sort of jump started that program a little bit early on and back in 2002, 2003, right?
Well, if you even go back further, Coach Wallach and I didn't know each other from a hole in the wall. And so we were hired roughly at the same time.
Yeah.
He's from the Hartford area in Connecticut. We ended up being roommates. And the first year we were together was 99, 2000. And we ended up spending 5 years together. So three years we worked together at Quinnipiac, and then he moved on to Yukon, but we still lived together. He commuted from
Oh, no way.
yeah, so we lived together for 5 years. Our wives became very good friends, and so Kyle and I are still excellent friends to this
Yeah.
day. It's funny because we were from two different areas. We kind of got thrown into uh, into an office together, and trust me, the office that we shared was probably the size of a broom closet. It wasn't very big at the time. We had one computer and one phone to share, but on two desks, so somebody could use the
Wow.
computer and somebody could use the phone. And but it was a lot of fun. I learned a ton from Kyle, and still do. It was certainly unique to be at the ground level at Quinnipiac at that time.
Yeah. When did they build all those new facilities? I'm sure things got a little bit prettier a little later in your tenure there.
Yeah, the rink itself was finalized or open for play in 2007. So it was. I think I was there for about 4 years of the new facility,
Mhm.
but it was in the plans and in the works for quite some time, and it finally materialized probably about
Yeah.
7 or 8 years after I had been there.
Yeah. So maybe we can talk a bit, about your journey leading up to me when I was 16,
Yeah.
and maybe sort of take our listeners through how exactly I came across your radar, and maybe what your first impressions were, and why you decided to reach out to me.
Yeah. Well, I think I always tell the story of that the hockey world itself is much smaller. Right? You hear the world is small. I think the hockey world's even smaller,
For
and
sure.
and
I agree.
and so I've always lived on that premise, and the reason being is that if you see something in a younger player that's intriguing, it might even be with your own eyes. It might be getting information from somebody else that you trust, and for me, it was a little bit of a combination of both for yourself,
Mhm.
and it's a matter of kind of tracking and seeing where that progression goes. And you never, especially at the goaltending position, when
Yeah.
there's so few spots, is you never know when for sure you're going to need a goaltender. You never know what type of goaltender you're going to need or what the fit may be, and
Yeah.
so you want to do all your homework and have all your ducks in order so that you're ready to be able to jump or to recruit and bring in the goaltender that you feel is suitable for your program at any given time.
Mhm.
But it goes back to having that influence by your own eyes, seeing what you see. Is it competitive? Does he have hockey sense, much like a normal player? But then also some of the maybe the influences or dialogue that you have with people that would be close to the player or know the player well, but that you also trust as a recruiter.
Mhm. And then regarding the little tournament, where we first met, as a coach, how come you attended something like that at the time? And maybe you can sort of, put into perspective of, hey, it doesn't matter where you're from. You sort of need to go play in front of scouts. You need that right exposure.
Yeah, you know, I've always had the mindset of good things happen when you're in a rink. And I think of all the quality players that I've recruited over the years, sometimes it's just getting a tip in the rink and then going seeing the player. It's not always just seeing the player initially. And so I've made it a habit over the years by trying to be in rinks so that I can garner and gather as much information as I possibly can. And what I mean by information is watching players, listening to people talk about um, uh, particular individuals and particular players. So I've always thought that that's very important. Doesn't matter what the tournament or the camp is. I think there's always value in being at the rink for a variety of reasons, as I just alluded to.
Yeah. And so as a young guy, like I was only 16 at the time and I haven't even it actually crazy how it all turned out like when you and I started chatting, but I hadn't even started playing junior yet until that upcoming fall season and we met in the summer. What are some things that you look for in young players that you think will eventually translate to junior and college hockey?
So I think when you talk kind of about, say, your path and being young, is I think there's two ways to look at it. I think there's the development or the actual hockey piece, but then and that's the hockey sense, the skill package, the spirit, the competitiveness, those types of things. But then the second part of it is, this is where I think it's truly important, especially for young players, is we're not all first round players. We're not all going first overall. We're not all going in the first round. Are you willing to embrace, the journey, like endure the grind and embrace the journey? And not everybody is. And so I look at, somebody like yourself, is you made a decision to go to a prep school when most people, probably 90% of the people that would have been in your shoes would have gone to play junior hockey, but it prolonged your process to eventually get to Vermont, to give you some different experience, but also give you some time to develop as a player, as well. And that's what I think is very important, because so many people are quick to try to get to the next step, to get to the next stage.
Yeah.
I find it's even more enhanced now with the Twitter and Facebook and
Oh
Instagram. Is
yeah.
that, people want their 12 hours, their kind of their day in the sun, to be able to tweet out that I'm going to here, or I've committed to here. And that's fine. However, the reality of it is to have great success and sustained success, might be a better way to put it, is
Mhm.
that um, you have to put time on your side, because there is no quick fix, because there's very few guys that are first rounders or first overall type picks. Most players, and people in the hockey world, even coaches, have to endure, that grind, and kind of embrace the journey, and it takes a little while to get to what you want, over the course of time.
Yeah. And for you, you talk about the process, you talk about the journey. And what are some things exactly that maybe, that stick out to you in your sort of long-term evaluations where you're looking like, hey, this kid's moving in the right direction because he's doing this or this? What are some of those things for you?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things. I put a lot of emphasis on the quality of person.
Yeah.
And to me, that comes in two forms. One is, are they willing to improve, and are they getting better? Is there signs of that? Like, um, as they jump from level to level, are they improving? Are they showing that they compete, and that they have an ability to dominate, or to be a real influence or a real factor in the game that
Yeah.
they play? But the other piece of it is that, what do people speak about them that are close to them, meaning their coaches, maybe their teammates, maybe it might be a trainer. Um, what is it that really makes a difference? And I know there's a lot of great recruiters out there, a lot of great scouts, and coaches that bring players in and they do their homework. And I found over the course of time that special kids get talked about different. It's not rehearsed. Um, it's not staged. If there's a genuine connection with that player, or seeing a player that has a willingness to improve, as I mentioned, endure that grind,
Mm-hmm.
and really want to get better at all costs, with keeping the framework and the character of team first mentality and improving
Yeah.
the group as a whole. That starts to really show itself over the course of time, and I've tried to stay true to that when watching players, and it's not just watching but learning about the player at the same time, and the person.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you kind of it's like they like you said they control the game and they make the players better around them, I think at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely. I think that's a huge, huge piece of it. And you can see that from body language of those around them. Do they have confidence in that particular player, and are they making them better at the same time?
Yeah. So as the year progressed, we kept chatting here and there, and things were going well for me around early winter. And I finally got my first junior start in like late November, December, and eventually went on to play plenty more games in junior on top of my midget games. But I always hear guys say, "Yeah, I was talking to this coach and so and so," and then after a while they just stop talking to me. What exactly are you looking for in young goaltenders as the season progresses? You've already sort of gotten started conversation with, and what are sort of the grounds where you terminate contact with somebody that's in the mix?
So I think, obviously, if you're filling the position, if you've filled the position with somebody else, obviously, um, that's going to end calls. Um, However,
Yeah, for
in
sure.
terms of continuing to discuss, it's some of those things we just touched on. Is that goaltender showing an ability to put his team in a spot to win night in
Yeah.
and night out? And some
Mm.
nights it'll be. I always say this, like we have one with us right now, Matt Galida, and
Yeah.
and Matty can win a game 1-0, but Matty can also win a game 5-4, and
Yeah.
we all, and especially goaltenders, we don't always have our best nights, but are we competitive enough, or are they competitive enough to win the game and understand the importance of being able to win the game, whatever the score may be, and
Playing good even on a bad night, finding ways to win even on a bad night.
absolutely, absolutely. Like, I'm sure you've had a couple nights where you might have given up 2 or 3 before the pucks really dropped. And, ooh, this is
Yeah.
a tough one. But what's your team looking for right now? Like, it might be 3-0 after 5 minutes, but you know what? There's still 55 minutes left in the game. If you
Yeah.
buckle down, your team's still going to have an opportunity to come back if you buckle down and start to find yourself and settle in. And so that's where, as the year goes along, I don't think it's any different than any other player. You have an ability to start to really show an ability to influence a game, to be competitive when it really the games start to become more intense, and it's in playoffs and there's more at stake. Do you have that ability to really be dialed in and provide your team with an opportunity to win?
Yeah, I think everybody sort of gets the consistency thing wrong. It's like your coaches know you're gonna sort of have a bad night, um, but that leads right into consistency. It's like, hey, you're good 60, 70 nights, you're pretty lights out, but that 30%, are you battling through those bad nights? Are you giving up 7 in a bad night, or are you giving up 5? And those two goals have a dramatic impact on one, the results of your team, and two, your numbers as a goalie, right?
uh, Absolutely. And I think, I mean, obviously numbers are important. I
Yeah.
don't want to dismiss that, but I think certainly at the goaltending position is no different than a defenseman or a forward. Is your hockey sense, your ability, like you might give up 2 or 3 on a given night because it's the other team's good, and they pick you apart. But
Yeah.
you have an ability to keep your team in a game and make a crucial save because you have an ability to track the puck and you don't get distracted. Like you continue to stay
Yeah.
with your process, and you alluded to the consistency, but you have that ability to continue to stay focused and um, I think that's a huge piece of it for a goaltender, because I've seen great goaltenders in the recruiting process give up 4 or 5, and I still walk away and I'm like, they're good, but they also
Yeah.
have a good evaluation of themselves after the game. Is that, hey, I need to be better. I need to make a few more saves.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just as important too. If you're up 5-0, you're winning 5-0, and all of a sudden take the gas off and you don't follow your process and it becomes 5-2 or 5-3. You've given a little bit of life to the other team. You might see them later on, down the line in the playoffs, or if
Yeah.
you're in the playoffs, you're giving them a little bit of hope. I think that's the same as having one of those tough nights.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. You're alluding to what I refer to as like a system, and as goalies, we all develop sort of systems like when we give up a goal, or like a sort of mental repetition with anchoring techniques to be able to focus. And then I think when you go up levels, the pressure gets on more and more, and you're still going to have those bad nights, right? So it's your ability to sort of stick to your process, whether you're up 5 rip or you're down 5 rip. Um, if
100.
which is exactly what you're alluding to. So, um, toward the end of that season, I had contacted you again, and I had several options. I could either play junior locally in Ontario in the OJHL, and I said I would be with my goalie coaches and all my resources, and I worded it exactly like that, or I could go to prep school and leave. And I asked you what I should do, and you told me to go the prep route. And I didn't even blink an eye. I was like, Mom, Dad, Ben Syer said to go to prep school. I'm going to prep school. So, and I got a lot of flack for that from all my friends, my teammates, coaches locally, and they all told me I was stupid and that I was throwing away a huge opportunity to play junior in Ontario, and that I could get a scholarship here. And maybe you could just guide us through what your thought process was like when you're making that recommendation for me, and why you decided to tell me to go the prep route.
Yeah, so it goes back to what I said before, is you want to put time on your side.
Yeah.
And you know if you go to yourself, I mean, you're a little bit vertically challenged, right? Like you're not the biggest goaltender, right? And so you want
No
to,
secret.
yeah, yeah. So you want to, hey, are you going to grow a little bit more? You want to put that, give yourself an opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
And then if you don't grow to the size of a more prototypical size goaltender,
Yeah.
now you're going to give yourself an opportunity to be able to compete and show your hockey sense and your abilities at a different level, um, as you, and then continue to keep moving up to
Yeah.
impress people.
Baby stepping your way, right?
Right, because at that same time, you're going to get stronger. As you get older, you're going to get stronger. So you might not grow, but you're going to get stronger. So when you get
Yeah.
stronger, your pushes are going to be quicker.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, players will want to jump just to kind of get the jacket, of,
Yeah, exactly.
but
Look cool with all their friends, right?
exactly. But really, it goes back to, I probably overuse the term process, but everybody has a slightly different process, a slightly different journey. And I've seen the best players over the course of my time put time on their side. The more, you can always put things a little bit in fast forward, but you can never go back. And what I
Yeah.
mean by that is, by you going to prep school, you were going to play against guys that were slightly younger than the junior age. You
Yeah.
were likely going to get more opportunity and starts.
Yeah.
Um, your size wasn't going to play in, but you were going to be able to get an opportunity to work out and improve your strength. That as a
Yeah.
smaller goaltender was going to eventually help you down the line, because you had hockey sense and you had an ability to, to compete. And so, I thought that that's where, you would have an advantage. And the other piece is, you're exposed. You had a commitment to wanting to play college hockey, and as a good student, you were going to go to New England and be around and showcase yourself in front of not only great Division 1 schools, but also great Division 3 schools. And you could start to then,
Exposure.
find what was important to you, because for every guy that was like yourself, that wanted and was going to live and die until they had an opportunity to play D1, there's other guys that might not have had that same drive, but they would have got exposed to, some great Division 3 programs that might have
Yeah.
provided them with great opportunity in life because of hockey. I mean, they were great students, but hockey was able to get to some of these schools, and it guides you in a different way and presents different opportunities for you. And so that was, kind of my mindset in suggesting. And I
Mhm.
knew the coaches at your prep school, and thought
Yeah.
very highly of them, and thought they were great guys, and had um, they cared about you, and were concerned about your development and your progress.
Yeah. And obviously that was 10 years ago now, and have times changed at all? Would you still make that same recommendation for me today as you did then?
I would. I still think I believe firmer that time is always has to be on your side. And this isn't a conversation about going to prep school versus going to the OJ. I think very highly of the OJ. That's not
Yeah.
but it's giving opportunity and slowing the process for you as an individual, because when you're done prep school, you could still always go back to the OJ, but you would also then be
Right.
exposed to those other schools and other opportunities that I just discussed, being in New England for a year.
Yeah. And do you think it's important to go play in markets where there's, I guess, because the reason I really was like, man, like I want to play in Hockey East, I want to play on the East Coast. I'm right in the back door there. So do you think it's important to maybe go to markets that, because people would argue like, hey, the hockey's better in Toronto, right? And you're sort of from here. And maybe that's just like a bias because everybody's from here. But at the same time, you see guys that were committing from like the EJHL into D1 programs, and it was just because they were in the backyard of all those schools, right?
Yes, but I think you alluded to being a bias. I think there is a bias. I think, like, the real good recruiters and the real good scouts really spend a lot of time getting to know the player and evaluating the player, irregardless of where they play, whether they're playing in Toronto, whether they're playing on the East Coast, and evaluating them for how they fit into their particular program. Um, and so I think it's and I've made a few mistakes recruiting over my time, just taking a player from a particular league, thinking because that player is coming from that league that they're going to be better, and that's not always the case. It's taking the right player that fits your program. So I do think there's some validity in exposing, but in your case, by going to New England, you expose yourself not just to Hockey East, but you expose yourself to the ECAC. You expose yourself to some
Yeah,
very
yeah.
good
Correct.
Division 3 schools as well too. And I know that wasn't your goal, but you're exposing yourself to, those Division 3 schools aren't going to get to Toronto the same way. Okay.
Yeah.
Even for that matter, some hockey schools probably aren't going to get to Toronto, or ECAC schools aren't going to get to Toronto the same as others. But it's not really necessarily a reflection of the quality of hockey. It's just um, a different exposure, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And we'll get into a bit of that more into this next question, but fast forward a bit, I have a couple good years at Avon. I think we stayed in touch a little bit then. But at that point, you had become more of a guide for me. And I'm sure it was a bit because of my size that held a lot of people back, moving forward on me. But when I had finished prep school, I once again, had several options to play junior. And I came to you and I asked you again, I said, should I go back to Ontario? Should I go play in the USHL or in the BCHL in British Columbia and Canada? And you sort of laid it out for me. You said USHL's first priority, then BCHL, then the Ontario League. And as a coach at the next level, and you talked about it a bit in the last question, but why did you categorize those leagues like that? And do the leagues you play in matter when being considered for a Division One offer?
So a little bit, meaning the leagues do matter a little bit. And why I would have categorized those in the way that I did for you is you look at the number of scholarships or players that go on to play Division One hockey from those leagues, and in
Yeah,
order, USHL, BC, and the OJ. That's the most in the USHL, then followed by the BC, and then the OJ.
yeah,
That's a list
correct.
that it would be. The other part of it is, though, it's not as simple as that. I guess this is probably a little bit from my personal standpoint is I think if you're willing to go and challenge yourself in the USHL, because there's no guarantees there, even though they're recruiting
No,
you and suggesting there's options, there's a lot of things that happen throughout the year that
oh yeah,
you might not be able to stay there. There might be import rules, or impacts that come
yeah,
down. But if you have a willingness, to get out of your comfort zone and go to the USHL or go to BC, I think that shows a little bit of fortitude and drive, by the individual. And it sounds like it's an Ontario guy here being biased against Ontario. It's not. You look at our roster right now. We have a ton of guys that are from Ontario and have
yeah.
played in Ontario. So it isn't that at all. But I also think that there's, when you're willing to kind of get out of your own comfort zone, and go somewhere else, it's a focus and a drive to be a hockey player. And obviously there's the academic piece to it, but when you're
Hmm.
finishing prep school, now and you're done high school, is now it's really, hey, I'm going to focus in on doing everything I can to be the best player I can, to create opportunities for myself. And sometimes that means having a little extra drive, getting outside your comfort zone and going to a place that isn't as comfortable, and being forced to really go win and earn a spot.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess maybe I think maybe you've developed that in me, a little bias toward Ontario. Which is funny because we're both from here, right? But I listened to you, right? And I went and tried out in the USHL. I made main camp. I actually got cut from my first one in Lincoln, and I didn't even realize they already had both their guys picked pretty much.
Yeah.
Um, but that's where Kyle Wallach actually saw me when I made the main camp and I went to Fall Classic. And then when I got cut from there, as per your recommendation, I went to the BCHL and ended up with Surrey Eagles. And my first game there is where Wallach from UVM saw me. I ended up committing there by Christmas. But maybe you can dive a bit into what I would refer to as the bubble theory and being a bubble guy at sort of the highest levels. And I think we need to be more willing to embrace uncertainty, right? Put ourselves out there, strive for the highest leagues possible, like you alluded to, getting uncomfortable. But maybe you can dive deeper into how being a bubble guy at higher levels actually creates worth for you and gives you value and helps you build reputation, make you look good versus just starting in junior C and trying to work your way up.
Hmm. Well, I think it goes back to a drive, to fight through adversity, because I don't care how good you are, as a player. When you come into a college, or when you make a jump, for that matter, from prep school to junior, that next jump during that year, you're going to face some degree of adversity. Whether it's you don't play as much, maybe, you're battling the pace, it's quicker than you expected. Maybe you get injured. Maybe in some cases, guys get a little bit homesick because they're out of their comfort zone, but there's going to be a little bit of adversity, or in some cases, a great deal of adversity.
Yeah.
And when you've shown that you have an ability to adapt and then rise to the top and to have influence, like we had talked earlier in the conversation, and influence that team. Now you've taken kind of a negative, maybe being released from a USHL program, but then finding a second opportunity with a new team, and then seizing that, and not just, hey, I got a jersey to wear, but I'm going to now wear this jersey and I'm going to make this team better. I'm going to help them win it at all costs. That's a quality that's extremely difficult to find, but it's that type of quality that creates competitiveness
Yeah.
and a desire to win. And certainly for me, as you reference a bubble guy, if you face a little bit of adversity, and I call it getting kicked in the teeth. If you get kicked in the teeth, you can kind of find a way to rise back up and keep fighting and be productive. That's to me, that's an enduring quality.
Yeah. No, for sure. It builds character, right? Getting kicked in the teeth a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think once I committed to Vermont, that was sort of where you and I had cut ties a bit. I think one, because it would be considered tampering,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you had also helped me achieve, what I had been looking for. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm just eternally grateful, honestly, for the guidance you gave me, and even going to prep school. I believe changed the entire trajectory of my life, not just hockey. It was the most amazing experience ever to have an opportunity to play in a program like that. Have that quality of schooling. I really started to take my school seriously, experience that lifestyle, and it matured me, and it really put me on a road to become a Division I goaltender. And then when I got to school, it just, everything was hard, obviously, but much more routine because I had already gone through that, and it allowed me to get a really good degree at the University of Vermont, the business school, studying finance. But um, maybe we can dive into some of your work at the next level. And as I mentioned earlier, I had a pretty good hand in recruiting a significant amount of the players from that Quinnipiac team that ended up going to the national championship Division I NCAA final. Maybe you can touch briefly on what it really takes to be considered for the Division I level, and who are the guys you're typically sort of going out and looking for? Is it just the guys standing out, or the guys that really take charge of their game and make those guys better around them?
yeah. Hey, just before I answer that, I know we didn't talk as much, but Wally and KP kept me updated on how things were going at UVM. So I'm still checking in on you just from afar. You didn't always.
Oh, really? Oh, that's awesome, man. I didn't know that. They never told me.
Yeah, yeah. But in terms of you know what we're looking for is I really think that there's two things that are non-negotiable um, in a player, and whether it's a goaltender, whether it's a defenseman or a forward, is your hockey sensibility to understand the game and um, for goaltenders, are they controlling their rebounds, or where is the next play going to be made? Help you with your anticipation.
Hmm.
The second piece of that would be your spirit, and that to me entices your character, uh,
Mm,
but your competitiveness as well, and really that drive. And we've touched on a few different times is in adversity, do you rise or do you sink? And those are two things for me that are extremely important. And then the other piece that I would say is the wow factor is what is it that you do as a player um, that consistently makes me as a scout or a recruiter look at you, so that when I leave the rink that I know who played in net, or I know who ran the power play, or who
yeah.
played against the other team's top group on a regular basis and won all the faceoffs. Like, it could vary from position to position and what your skill package may or may not be. However, it did you catch my attention? Did you make me get out of my chair because I'm like, I need to go down and speak to that player. I need to find out who that is and does he fit, at our program. So those
Hmm.
are kind of the three things that really catch my attention as I'm watching a player.
Yeah. And for, and for goalies, how can goalies sort of go out and work on that either in their routines or in their training or when they play, do you think? You have any suggestions?
I think goaltenders are the same. Um, like, are you? So you're asking when, and how can they work on it? I think it starts in practice. To be frank with you,
Yeah.
if you're coming in or accepting a shot, off a flow drill where there's really no second opportunity other than with the player that's shooting on you, are you tracking that puck? If it's a 2-on-0, are you competing when that puck comes across the slot
Yeah.
line or the Royal Road? One, more often than not, quality goaltenders are at least going to get to that first pass. But if it were to come back or where that rebound would come off of that pass, off that shot, are you now challenging for where the third shot would come? Like, you
Yeah.
get scored on in practice. Are you challenging and are you putting yourself in a position where you're doing it the right way every time, you
Competing too,
go
right?
right. And not just scrambling and jumping for pucks, but are you coming across and improving, your slides and your pushes so that you're square to make that next save. And that's where I think some goaltenders, get away from that because we've touched on this already. You want a goaltender that, yeah, has some wow factor, can steal a game, but even though you want to see that, what ultimately do you want? You want a guy that's going to be consistent, non
Uh-huh.
like throughout the 58 minutes of the game that you need him to be consistent and not giving up a weak goal or
Yeah.
not giving up a goal that he failed to compete on or track it that he should have.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally get it. It's that compete that the attention to detail really, and it starts in practice. I agree with that. I'm glad that you sort of brought that up. um but pertaining to exposure, and as we discussed briefly in the convo, what can goalies do to give themselves a better chance of getting seen by scouts and coaches at Division 1 level? What are some tournaments you go to or that you can recommend some kids go to get more exposure?
I think it slightly varies from year to year. To be
Okay.
honest, it might because over the course of time, there's been the Beantown Classic out east, the Chowder Cups. In
Yeah.
Toronto, there was a prospects tournament for a long time. Uh,
Yeah.
Certain camps that have come along. I know many schools we do it at Cornell where we offer a prospect camp now, so we have gives us an opportunity not only to see them play but to get to know them as people and as individuals. So we do that to get an opportunity to get some insight on them. Certainly, whether you're in U.S. or Canada, if you have an opportunity to play for any of the tryout camps or the particular Team Canada, Team Ontario, or
Yeah.
US, if you're able to go to the festivals and select camps, certainly that gives you exposure as well. The reality of the question that you're asking right now, I go back to it how we kind of started this, is I don't think that any camp or any tryout or any team, however you want to look at it, is a waste unless you
Yeah.
show up and you're not ready to give it your very, very best and give it your all.
Right. Right.
Because you never know who's going to be watching and what they're watching for. I've been tipped off on guys that maybe I haven't actually ended up recruiting or had come to my program. Um, but I've noticed and seen at camps and been impressed by them. And maybe I didn't have room for them. Like, for instance, we have a guy, Sean Collins, that I coached at Cornell my first year here. He was a captain, went on to play the National Hockey League. And I recruited him while I was at Quinnipiac. It just didn't
Yeah.
fit for what we were looking for at Quinnipiac. He was a heck of a hockey player, and I watched him at
Yeah.
a camp in out in Manitoba in the middle of in July.
Yeah.
It wasn't it,
Wow.
yeah, it was a random kind of a random camp, and I still remember watching him. And he's a great player, and he was a great player at Cornell and great kid. Um, and I just fortunately, I only got a chance to coach him for 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah, I always say that to guys too. Like most of the guys, because everybody talks about money grabs and, you got to go there and stand out. Because at the end of the day, whether it's the tournament or whether it's even the regular season, like 95% of guys, and I would go even further to say that less than that, get an opportunity to play at the Division 1 level, right? So you got to sort of stand out.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think you talk about like the money grab or things like that. Like you, you don't know who's going to be at a certain event. If you're going to go and you're going to give it your absolute all you need to be seen is by one guy. You don't need to be
Yeah.
seen by all 60 schools.
Yeah.
And or every Division 3 school. You just need to be seen by one person. But in order to do that, you have to give it your very all. And if it's a camp, are you willing to go in there and learn? Sometimes it's not always, at our camp, it's not always what you do in the scrimmages. It's how are you being coached? Are you coachable? What are
Yeah.
you doing some things that we know we can work with, later on as well too.
Yeah. And and for contacting purposes, how should people go about maybe, contacting coaches? What should they say? Who should they contact? What should they send them? Is that sort of a no-no, or do you recommend that to sort of help yourself get on their radar, like which schools you're interested in attending?
Yeah, I don't think it hurts I think if you pulled a significant amount of coaches, you get a different answer. For me, I think it's okay to reach out to a particular coach of a program that you're interested in. But as you do it, make it a little bit personal. Like know that
Yeah.
know what school you're looking, at. Like I always find it interesting is I get emails quite frequently. Hey, Coach Syer, I'm a 2.8. I have a 950 GPA or a 950 SAT. I would love to, receive a full scholarship to Cornell University. And for those that are listening right now and are aware of, we work on financial aid, so it's not a scholarship. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
two
yeah.
not going to get you in, and the 950 is not going to get you in. I
No.
don't care if you're Sidney Crosby, you're not going to get into Cornell.
The
Yeah,
admissions, there's no way they're letting that into Cornell.
no, that's not happening. So you know, have an awareness of kind of what you're looking at, and do a little bit of research on the program and the person that you're contacting. I think that goes a long ways.
Yeah, definitely. You want to make it, even just dropping a couple things like, hey, I saw you were here, or hey, I saw you guys did this year, or like, congrats on this. Like, just little things that make it a little more personable go a long way, right?
Yeah, because then the player themselves has spent a little bit of time to investigate your program, and they're not just sending this particular email out to 60 different
Mass
60 different.
emailing.
Yeah, and they showing a little bit of self awareness of what type of player and what type of student they are as
Yeah.
well too. I think that's very important to have an awareness of that as you target certain schools. But the reality of it is, Mike, is that as coaches, we really and recruiters, we're out there a lot. There's not a lot of surprises. We
Yeah.
talked about this earlier. The hockey world is much smaller than the regular world, and there's not there's not a ton of surprises. That's for sure.
Yeah. Everybody, I totally agree. It's a lot smaller. It's crazy how small it is. Actually, I'm after doing all these interviews, I'm realizing that you and Wallach and all my coaches at Avon, like you guys all know each other. It's just like this little
Oh yeah,
circle.
yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
was a
exactly.
surprise for me, a big surprise for me, honestly.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, Billy Maniscalco, who worked at Avon, was he probably helped Wally and I pay our rent for the first 4 years. We used to do clinics and stuff when we weren't making enough money to live, and Billy would help us out at the rink, and we'd do clinics. And I've learned so much for him, learned so much from him over the years, and just a great man too.
yeah, Billy, man, he was. He was awesome. He would help me at the end of practice. I'd be like, "Hey, let's go down to the other end," and he'd do conditioning with me for like 3 minutes while the Zamboni was coming out. I'd be yelling at the Zamboni driver to like stay off the ice because we only got like 50 minutes in prep school for like practice, right? But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's funny how small world. But for everybody listening, yeah, like you never really know, the relationships that you build and the people that you sort of play hard for and you work hard for. It all comes full circle eventually, right? So I think everywhere you go, you always want to, like I said, build those relationships and play hard for your coaches and the people around you, right? Um, Maybe diving a bit into your time at Cornell. You've been there for 9 years now, and you've seen plenty of great goalies come through your program, including an old friend of mine, Mitch Gillum from the BCHL, and we played against each other in prep school as well.
Yeah.
And now the latest, Matt Galida, who did awesome the last few years for you guys. But over your time with Big Red and the successful goalies you've coached, what are some of the biggest characteristics that they possess that have helped them not just get by, but excel at the Division I level and allowed them to be considered among the best in the country?
Yeah, there you talk about two guys that have completely different personalities in Billy and Maddie, but there's a couple things that really stick out with both of them. And if you go back and even watch them in junior hockey or in prep school, Maddie played at St. Andrews,
Yeah.
is you will see that they have hockey sense. And I still remember in particular with Matt when we were recruiting him. I watched him in a game in a preseason, and he never quit on a shot, even if it was a third or fourth shot, even if he got beat. He was always trying to stay square to the puck,
Yeah.
and he was anticipating those, where the next play was going to be at. And Gilly had those tendencies as well too. That ability though to be able to anticipate and really know where that next shot was coming from is certainly something that I think they both share. Maddie, for me, he might be one of the most competitive goaltenders that I've seen. When I first got to Cornell, our starting goaltender was Andy Isles.
Yeah.
He
I remember
probably was
him.
the most competitive guy. He was a little bit undersized, so you could probably
Oh yeah.
appreciate him. But
Him and Jeff Lerg were guys I looked up to.
yeah, right, yeah, yeah. I mean, just never quit on a puck in practice. It didn't matter. Like he was an animal, and and Gilly had something that a lot of goaltenders don't have. He had a great ability to play the puck, like just an uncanny
Yeah,
ability.
he did.
His first game, he scored a goal. Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember that it went viral all over, like it was on ESPN and stuff too, I think.
Yeah. And, when you talk specifically with Gilly and Maddie, they also have an ability to forget, because I would put them both in that category. How we talked, they could win you a game 1-0. They could win it 5-4. And if they gave up 4 tough ones on any given night, the next night when they start, they're right back at it, and they've forgotten about the 4 goals. They've used it to motivate them and make certain adjustments, but they've forgot it and realized that, hey, I'm back in the net. We've got to go win this one, whatever it's going to take.
Yeah, having that as a goalie, you got to have a short memory, right? One day you're the man, the next day you're the dog, but at the end of the day, your job doesn't change, right? It's an emotional roller coaster, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I think for me, a goalie talking about transitioning well to sort of the Division I level. A big skill of mine, as an undersized goalie, and I think that it didn't really matter, like as you alluded to, of anticipation and having that hockey IQ and being able to sort of read the play. Because at that level, things get so fast and guys fool you so well that you constantly got to kind of be ahead of the game a little bit. You can't be. If you're reacting too much, if you're waiting too much, and you end up getting burnt, right? Because guys just move the puck so well, pick their spot so well and stuff like that. But I just want to dive in finally into your championships with Cornell.
Mhm.
3 straight ECAC league championships in the last 3 years, so congrats on those. And maybe you can dive into the role of your goaltenders, and Matty played in helping you accomplish those feats. What was required out of him? Was he the one playing the last 3 seasons when you guys won?
Yeah, yeah.
What was required of him to eventually lead you guys to victory? How important was the goaltending role in winning those championships?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, a good team start from the nets out. I mean, I think that's well documented. Um, but what he has done, and Gilly, was doing that as well. Is you got to have a decor in front of him that can, eliminate second and third
Yeah,
shots when provided. But Matty battles in practice. He tracks pucks in practice, and he does the same in games. And so he provides a degree of consistency,
yeah,
and that consistency allows the guys in front of him to play a little bit freer,
for
um,
sure.
just because they can make a play. If they make a mistake, they know Matty's there to bail them out.
Mhm.
And but I know I've probably overused the word consistent, but that's what he is. He's consistent,
Yeah.
and he's a battler, and he's a competitor, and he wants to win. And over, the 3 league titles that we've won in a row, is he's provided and led our team in terms of that consistency. And there's been other guys, at other positions that have done great things to help us, but he's been consistent, from start to finish, and provided a confidence to our team, has allowed our guys to play free.
hmm And for goalies looking to win a championship, what's some advice you can give them come playoff time in order to find ways to overcome the challenges that come their way to eventually lead their team to victory? For you, what is, you know, exactly what's required to win in playoffs, and how can they work on that throughout the course of their career to get that award? I think for me, it was, just in playoffs it's everybody's going to get their chances, right? And that's why I don't think in this day and age there's a team that's ever won a championship who doesn't really have a good goaltender, right? He's going to have to make some big saves eventually.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, but in order to make that big save, you have to put yourself in the right spot to make the simple saves all the time,
Yeah.
and to do it the same way every time, whether it's a 2-on-1 in practice, whether it's the first game of the year, how are you tracking pucks? And when, as a goaltender, when you get beat on just a great shot, you were in position and you would play it the same way again.
Yeah.
You also know when you cheated, or when you got beat because you didn't anticipate. And if you continue to have that mindset of doing it the right way all the time, whatever the scenario is that I think when it comes time, crunch time, playoffs, you're just going to go back to what your habits are. And if your habits are being consistent and being square, and compact and composed, that's what you're going to rely on. It doesn't matter what the game is,
Yeah.
whether it's a championship game, whether it's an NCAA game, or it's a game in the middle of January. You're going to do it the same way. And I think that's absolutely important, at the goaltending position.
Yeah. You're basically, and I believe in this too, of like throughout the season, we're playing regular season games to sort of figure out where we sort of stand in the playoffs. But you're also working toward that consistency of and those systems that you develop as a goaltender. So that way, like you said, like when you get to those championship games, all year you've been working on how exactly you're going to stop that 2-on-1, how exactly you're going to stop that 5-on-4, however you play the PK, whatever it is. And then when the time comes, you're not really thinking too much, right? You've already sort of worked on it all year. You know what you got to do. You just got to go out there and sort of execute when the time comes, right?
Absolutely. And the only thing that I might add to that, Mike, is that
Yeah.
I do think that goaltenders need to be students of the game. There's sometimes the goaltenders don't dive in maybe to video and like team video. I think a lot of
Yeah.
guys get very individually focused, and it's easy to do at the goaltending position. But you alluded to it, like, what is the other team's power play? Who's a threat to shoot the one time, or what are their tendencies? I think that's very important for a goaltender to know that, because it gives them confidence in the system that you just alluded to and the structure that they built throughout the year. But allows them to have a little bit more anticipation if they understand some of the tendencies of the opposing team.
Yeah. Yeah, fuck, sort of, and at that next level, I noticed that when I went to college, like picking up on the top lines. I didn't do that so much when I was in junior. I kind of tuned it all out.
Yeah,
But I think that when you get to that Division 1 level and even that pro level, and you're facing the Ovies of the world, right?
yeah,
You sort of got to know what looks they're gonna throw you a little bit, so you have that bit of an edge up when the time comes, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Uh, Coach Syer, do you have any final advice for my audience that you feel passionate about sharing?
I think we've already touched on it, in different in different questions and at different times throughout this. But I will share this, is that, follow your dreams with passion and deliberate purpose. I mean, um, want to get better before you make the next step.
Yeah.
That means putting time on your side so that you have an opportunity to practice more and have deliberate practice, so that when you do make that step, whether it's from midget to junior, or midget to prep school, or prep school to junior, whatever the jump may be,
Hmm.
is that you've prepped yourself, you've prepared yourself for that next step. Because I just find so often that players want to make that next step, but they haven't researched, or they haven't prepped themselves to be, able to make that jump.
Yeah.
And it's so important when you make that next jump that you have the qualities, not just physical qualities, but the mental qualities, and the ability to deal and fight through adversity um, to compete. And so, if it's something you truly want to, pursue your passion, much like yourself, is stay with it, but be deliberate in your practice, and understand that the time is your friend, and know that your path is likely different than the guy sitting beside you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I feel like you helping me go the path I did really, helped my development, right? Because, like you said, everybody wants to make that jump to junior at 16, but the fact of the matter is not everybody's ready to make that jump. And it's the same thing, and I even thought so too when I was 18. I'm like, man, I did so good in prep school. Why does nobody want to commit me to Division 1?
Yeah,
And then I got there, and at 20 years old, and I played North Dakota my first night, and I was like, wow, okay, now I understand why they didn't want me at 18 years old.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah. So, no, you need to focus on development over anything. You need to be the guy where you go. You need to be playing. You need to be deliberate, and sort of growing every single year with that long term goal in mind. Like you said, time's on your side. But Ben, thank you for coming on the show, buddy. So awesome to just finally connect on the phone and have an opportunity to catch up about what's transpired the last 11 years since we met. And just a great opportunity for me to thank you for truly changing my life and the trajectory of my whole career. And I know a lot of people today will get a ton of value out of hearing, one of the best coaches in college hockey get some insight on what it takes to be recruited and what it takes to play at the next level. Can you just let my audience know where they can find you or your school online?
yeah. Well, you can certainly get on our website to dive into our program at Cornell Big Red .com. And certainly, as I mentioned, we have different camps throughout the summertime that players can attend. Junior and prep school players, and even midget players can come down. Now this year's a little bit different with the pandemic, but
Yeah,
but
for sure.
we get back full steam next year, where we're able to do that. And I'm on Twitter as well, and try to do my best to keep tabs on everybody in the Twitter world as well.
What's your Twitter handle? I think you got a pretty good following, actually.
Yeah. It's Ben Syer at CU Big Red Hockey.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, go check out Coach Syer online. He's helped me my journey. And if you guys are looking to play Division I college hockey, this definitely watch back and take some notes. I'm grateful for you coming on the show, man. Maybe if, I'm sure you'll be continuing with your coaching work for some more, and maybe we'll have you back on the show down the line if that's something that interests you.
that would be awesome. I've certainly really enjoyed my time with you here today, Mike. And as you already alluded to, it was great to kind of reconnect here and have an opportunity to chat a little bit today.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful for you coming on, and it's always a pleasure talking about some old times. You take care and be safe, and we'll chat soon, man.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and you too, and all the best to you and your family.
Take care. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode, guys. If you like what you heard today, make sure to hit that subscribe button, as we have tons of amazing guests lined up already to come onto the show in the next few months. Make sure to tune in next week and every Tuesday from now on at 8 a.m. as I have an old friend of mine and mentor, Mike Uzis, on the show. Mike is an absolutely grizzled vet with over 500 plus pro games played now and has an incredibly long record of being a winner at the next level. I looked up to Mike a lot growing up, and his resume over the last 20 plus years playing the game speaks for itself. I know you guys won't be disappointed. Without further ado, here are the giveaway details for the NeuroTracker X subscription we're giving away. To enter the giveaway, if you're an Apple user, simply go to the Apple Podcast app on your phone and leave us a written review and rating. And if you're an Android user, you can also download iTunes onto your computer, search the show, and leave a written review and rating on there as well. Once you leave a review of the podcast, take a screenshot of it and either email it to goaliehacks@gmail.com or DM me on Instagram with your screenshot and your full name. If you guys are also interested in getting started with the product, feel free to hit me up either by email or Instagram direct messages to get more details. Get excited, guys. Great things ahead. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I'll see you next week.